Hello, family. I'm Janaya Future Khan, and this is Dark Woke. Just before we hit it, I want to say thank you to all the listeners out there, and a special shout out to the supporters who make this show possible. It truly means the world to me. If you'd like to become a member, our Patreon is linked in the episode right up below. Hello, family. Thank you so much for your patience. I, of course, wanted to do every single episode this week, but there was some materials that I needed to work on that are essential for what I believe is going to be the blueprint for first century organizing. And that's the very thing that we're missing. But I can't even begin to articulate how much we are in hell. I can't explain it, but every ICE agent is Michael Rappaport. Every single one. And we need to treat them accordingly. And we're in this incredible, awful moment where we're seeing people rise up everywhere across the country. We're also seeing an unbelievable amount of discord and chaos and violence all over the world and the global economy, thanks to this administration. It's a moment where we have to circle back to some of our roots in American imperialism. While I can list the litany of things that are awful and wrong, and my God, will we have time for that? Because there's so many, right? And also just the things that are kind of fun and hot, right? I mean, we all know what's going on with heated rivalry. I want to say, I want to stumble across saying LGBTQ as much as like Reyes Sehorn, who, by the way, absolutely love. And part of the reason why heated rivalry is awesome, A, because everybody's hot, but B, it's we're so starved for intimacy. We're so starved for warmth. So there's all these things, right? We could talk about the war zones, the death, and I want to send love to, Renee Good and her family. Right now, the DOJ is getting primed to investigate Renee Good's wife. And while this amount of spontaneous action is incredible and essential, there has to be a framework. There has to be a narrative strategy. There has to be a response. I want to go back to our roots, right? I don't think things could be clearer. We are in the great battle of beliefs. This is exactly what we were talking about several years ago. And the question is, do we have a belief system, right? And is it actualized? And if we do, who are the people who defend it? And the thing is, we don't. Not yet. We have the beginnings of one. And I think we have a sense of one. But in writing these materials, and I actually want to go over them with you because I talked about a free speech campaign, but I realize, as I've discovered, it's actually not intuitive for most people. And talking with funders, and look, I don't even know how long I'm going to keep this episode up. So, maybe for a week or so. But I wanted to share it with you because you're owed it. And I wanted to explain to you why I haven't been around. Before we jump, I do want to say, and I'm going to be blinking a lot. I'm slower than usual. I have not been sleeping. I think I accidentally put the pain of losing my mother too deep inside. And I'm not having trouble sleeping. It's so much worse than that. I'm not sleeping at all, and I haven't for days. And thinking is hard. And I do have my laptop with me, and I'm going to get help for it because I'm afraid that my brain is going to start melting out of my ears. So writing these, the language, it's one thing to be like, I have an idea, I know exactly how we're going to win, and then to articulate it, just very homophobic. Just feels very homophobic to have to actually come with the burden of proof. So I want to explain to you why I believe this is exactly what we need and what it's going to do for us, right? But I want to be clear. What I'm suggesting isn't just like, that's not what it's going to be called. It's not a free speech campaign, but I'm going to make the case for it. And you are the first to hear it, along with some of the folks who have some power and some resources and are really buying in, because in a moment when people want to do something and everybody wants some, there's something to do. There's so many things that must be done. It's hard to know what and where to start, right? How do you even begin to identify and classify? And of course, we've created these conditions where so many of our needs are competing, right? There are so many dispossessed people. But oftentimes, where there's the most pain, right, there's also the most opportunity. That's where the intervention point matters the most. We're living in this time of unprecedented consolidated power across the right. So what do we do with what we know? I'm going to explain some things around what's the problem. I'm going to talk about what I believe is the solution. And then we're going to use an example, right? And there will be a couple of examples, but there was something really revealing in this whole Bowen Yang, Matt Rogers, Jasmine Crockett moment, right? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll explain it closer too. But basically, he says something, Matt says something about whether or not Crockett is viable as a candidate. And of course, I have notes for everybody because that's what I do. But I want to explain in part why things feel so shit beyond the obvious, right? We know there's a power structure. But before there was a power structure, right? Because there was one in 2016, but this one's different, isn't it? There was a narrative intervention first, and it was perfected by the right, okay? So we know that there's an outsized amount of, power and concentration around, they call it the manosphere, right? And it's really easy to point to that and say, this is the reason. But when we actually get closer to it, right, it's like this is part of a deliberate billionaire-funded effort to launder extremist talking points into the mainstream media for the purpose of political influence, right? You can't take money out of people's pocket. You can't take their rights if they're watching it. They have to be looking somewhere else. Like, take, for example, the fact that Americans have pretty much lost an incredible amount of healthcare infrastructure and funding. That money is being directed to ICE. So Americans don't have healthcare so that ICE, and who are these Michael Rappaport dummies, like found off of a Craigslist ad another day, and by another day, I mean next week, we can go in on how absolutely utterly incompetent these folks are. But again, this is what matters right now, okay? So their strategy worked. If we go, I want to pull back up the 2024 Media Matters report, okay? Where we learned that right-wing shows weren't only more numerous, right? Which they are. They account for 82% of the sort of shows and content out there that are popular. Take a minute to consider what that means, okay? We have 82%. That's of the 320 popular shows that Media Matters assessed. And not only do they have more shows than we do, their audience size per show is 5-1. That is the difference in hundreds of millions, right? It's not like they have 20 million more. That's hundreds of millions. Right-leaning shows accounted for 2/3 of all YouTube views from channels affiliated with the shows assessed. Right, it comes up to about 65 billion views in total. The left didn't crack half of that, okay? And 9 of the top online shows are right-leaning, right? So let's just put it this way. Out of the 9 out of the 10 top shows, they have a following of collectively maybe 197 million. 197 million. What's the population of America? What is it, 330 something? 330 million? Of course, some of these folks are coming, are going to be watching from elsewhere in the world. But think about how many, realistically, right? We only have one show that cracks 20 million, and it's across multiple platforms. And it's considered a left-leaning show, and it's Trevor Noah's podcast. And I gotta be honest with you. That's concerning to me, not because I have a problem with Trevor Noah, but largely because that is not a person that reflects our views. The way this works is it doesn't matter if you are interested in, weightlifting or comedy or sports. If you are watching these shows, you will get red-pilled. That's part of it, right? And while this was happening, how was the right able to shore up their support? Like, certainly you can have, what? I mean, how many years have there been shows, right? How many years has YouTube been around? What made this different? A, of course, it was the billionaire funding, and it was part of a deliberate strategy. But B, they capitalized on something, right? They capitalized on the resentment and fear and fatigue that the left had cultivated, to the extent that we couldn't say something lest it be called homophobic or transphobic or racist, and that was to each other, right? And so what did the right do? They started to call themselves champions of free speech, and I'm rolling my eyes so far back. I'm looking at Harriet Tubman right now. Okay, we're looking at the ancestors. Like, I know, and also I'm not going to have good riffs or one-liners. This is there's not a lot going on in my brain right now because I am so tired. Pray for future sleep. But they really ran with this notion of free speech, as in we are the champions. We are willing to say what everybody else is too afraid to say. And if you think about it, and this is not something I'm interested in sort of arguing and going deeper in because it's a moot point at this, but I started to realize that in a way, our generation, and I mean that anyone who's left leaning, we kind of took for granted representation. We took for granted the fact that like mainstream media, and I know you're going to say, huh, but just take a beat, right? That mainstream media kind of represented good, like good would, ultimately succeed. There was a way that we didn't feel compelled to defend our way of life, our ideology, that good would prevail. And that's not an exact science, unfortunately, as we know, right? And so they use the free speech stuff and simultaneously sort of frame themselves in this victim narrative, right? And that's what the right was really able to do. So anytime, I can say whatever I want. It's like, first of all, you could have done it the whole time. You might have get punched in the throat for it, but you could have done it the whole time. So they were really able to capitalize on it. And I want to be clear about something, right? Sure, we can point at the manosphere, but let's actually be specific. When one political perspective dominates the information ecosystem so completely, right? It fundamentally distorts our collective understanding and experience of reality. That's why we all feel nuts right now. We all feel nuts right now because the most antisocial, right? Stupid, hate-filled, insecure people are not only running the government, they're also deciding what we see online at every possible moment with the intention of sowing discord. So every left-leaning voice has been marginalized, right? Do you want to know how bad things have got? And I'm telling you something you already know. Renee Good, the 37-year-old mother, right, who I later discovered was just actually dropping her child off at daycare. It was 9:30 in the morning, right, when she was executed in cold blood by ICE agent Jonathan Ross. Jonathan Ross, right, spelled exactly as it sounds, just in case we need a reminder of who he is. We're not going to forget that name, right? He executed her in cold blood, right? And she'd been a legal observer at different, activations and stuff. But part of the reason why ICE agents were even there in the numbers that they were in the first place in Minneapolis is because some stupid kid, some little piece of shit named Nick Shirley, who I cannot articulate how stupid this person is, right? Unbelievable. Like, I've watched videos of him. He's clearly being propped up by the right. He's calling himself some sort of journalist, right? He can't read. This guy made a series. He's some right-wing piece of shit YouTuber, made a series of videos talking about a daycare scam by Somalis in Minneapolis. And that is all it took for a huge surge of ICE agents to be down there in the numbers that they are, right? And it was a lie. And the funny thing is, the person who was running, there was only one daycare that was implicated in any kind of scandal. And it was run by a white woman. A white woman was at the head of the entire thing, right? So the Trump administration and their billionaire counterparts and all of the trash bag evil people, and I was so loath to use that word for so long, but that's what this is. That's like that. It's naked, and we're looking at it. They have used this they have used their sort of asymmetrical influence on the information ecosystem, right, to just run their agenda entirely. There is no truth. And to this right now, we're still at this stage where I think it's like holding them accountable. You can't hold fascists accountable. Fascism is accountable to nothing. And where the worst is, right, where the most pain is often where the best opportunity is. And that's what I want to talk about. And I want to explain, right, why this framing, this campaign, and the significance of it is, I believe, what is going to help usher in the movement that we need, because it is something that is informed by our successes and failures over the last 10 to 15 years, right? So let me break it down. I'm going to do it kind of like, when I was at Color of Change, they had something called a theory of change, right? I know some of you will be familiar with it, but the theory of change is, you're identifying really basic things, right? What's the problem? what's the solution, and what's the solution design? Where's the opportunity? So I want to talk to you about the opportunity. Okay? This is the first time in our generation where we've seen this many dispossessed people across, class, race, gender, etc., at the exact same time. So under the Trump administration, you've got scientists that are marginalized alongside members of the Federal Reserve. You've got Ivy League institutions that are attacked alongside the very same activists that they themselves found themselves in the in the crosshairs of during the pro-Palestine movements several months earlier, right? We've got venerated performing arts centers like the Kennedy Center that are being gutted alongside veteran benefits, right? Mainstream news organizations are attacked with the same fervor as women's rights. We've even got attorney generals that find themselves, right, standing in front of the very same system that was leveraged against so many people of color, so many poor people in this country. It's unbelievable. I mean, big businesses, right? Not big tech, but businesses themselves are being exploited by big tech with the same kind of fervor that they sought to exploit consumers with. That's the level of dispossession that we're at. And so I believe that it is this dispossessed, like these people, our people, who represent the bedrock for a new non-identitarian movement. This is the first time we're seeing the professional class be so dispossessed in this way. And this is how we move into offering a pluralist vision of America, right? That saves the soul of America without denying the sins that made it sick in the first place, right? Which is why so much of this is going to be us. And I want to explain, right? Again, the goal is to build a blueprint for 21st century organizing. We accomplish this in two ways. We have a free speech movement on the left that builds cultural and political power, right? And this is essential. This is essential because we don't win if we don't do this. And then we model that free speech. And this is where it comes down to us, right? Because what do we mean? First of all, with the free speech movement, let me make my pitch. I promise you, I'll get you, right? It's accessible to everyone. Of course, it's not going to be the name. It's not going to be the name, but it's accessible to everyone. It's something that Democrats who annoy us, it's something that policymakers, it's something that educators and content creators and artists, right? And transgenders and teenagers, right, can grasp and rally around without needing to be activists or overnight issue area experts. Most people just want to return to a world where ICE isn't abducting people on the street, where facts are respected and where rights are protected. And free speech is kind of just the entry point. We use campaigns, activations, initiatives, content partnerships to demonstrate that this isn't simply about competing political ideologies. This is where we have to show up differently, right? Again, the point of this is to remind people that this side, our side, is the one that believes in protecting the things that make life worth living in the first place. So it isn't simply about competing ideologies. It's art, it's expression and free expression, it's love, it's possibility, it's care, right? And we do this and we simultaneously build up the power that we need to turn those beliefs into policy. From a more direct vantage point, let me just take a sip of water. And I hope that, this is making sense. I'm not used to just, delivering something. I mostly wing these things. So with research, obviously, because I like to be right, but my brain is mashed potatoes right now. But every time I talk to people about this, I got them. And now we're finally, moving towards it. But I want to, there's so much more, okay? I'm about to get you. Wait until I get to how we need to get our shit together on the left. That's my favorite part. But from a more direct vantage point, right? Free speech protections belong to us. It was us. If you go back a few episodes, we talked about that with Woodrow Wilson and the Sedition Act. But they didn't want people being anti-war. They didn't want people being anti-authoritarian, right? And at this stage, leftist ideology or whatever it is that is presumed to be is something that the Trump administration is actually suppressing. So while the right claimed that their free speech was being impeded, which, no, you're just fucking losers. Nobody wants to hear from you. Right? So then you had to create something to make, listening to you worth it. Well, they capitalize on some of our weaknesses, and I'll go over what those are. Right? But we are literally being censored on every level, right? Anything that's considered leftist ideology. And this should be a wake up call for us because we took some of these things for granted, right? This idea that things would, were just right themselves, or well, I think I want to say something more positive, which is that we have yet to make our generational mark. Lived on the rights that people fought and died for before our time, and then we've enjoyed them, and we never really moved in a unified or intentional way to push the envelope further. And I will explain why that is, right? But we're talking book bans, elimination of press freedoms, scrubbing names and resources and terms off the federal website and out of policy, weaponizing executive orders against everybody you don't like, right? And then rewriting history, rewriting American identity to impose this shitty worldview that is very much hell-bent on creating a white ethno-state. First of all, I can't, no, stay focused, Future. Sorry. Okay. So the question is, how did we lose this badly? How did we lose this badly, right? So think about it this way. We've lived through a magnificent era of mass mobilization, right? You guys know, you've heard me list this before. We have Black Lives Matter, Standing Rock, the Women's March, No Muslim Ban, Families Belong Together, right? Me Too, Stop Asian Hate, right? And out of these movements, what have we gotten, right? And Black Lives Matter is, inarguably the most impactful and the most effective in terms of what it looked like to build up political power and cultural presence simultaneously. But again, that was really between 2014 to 2017 or 2013 to 2017, depending on where you enter the conversation from. But what have we seen since? Because even then, it was to say that it was, incredibly impactful, or that would not be accurate. It was smart, but too many people didn't buy in. And in 2020, the infrastructure to see things through, not only had so many people moved on, but when we said things like defund the police, which you all know I would have come up with a better line than that. But it didn't take, and it's not the fault of anybody that it didn't take. It's the system and the world in which we live. If we can't confront racism, which I'm so upset about. I wish it was anything but black shit. I'm like, to be that, maybe I should just start. I wonder if there's like a spray. Like I should just paint myself white for a couple of days and see what that's like. But one thing we can say from every one of these movements, though, or activations, or whatever you want to call them, right, is that we came out with better language, right? We had better understandings of race and gender and sexuality, right? That each and every single one of these activation points led to the creation of some kind of understanding or a new set of words. And that's one of the things that we can expect from movements, right? But they become shorter and less impactful with each passing one. And what you'll notice, right, if you go back to Black Lives Matter, to Standing Rock, to the Women's March, right, keep going, marching forward, all the way up to Stop Asian Hate, that they became more invested in cultural presence than building political power. And so that led to a preoccupation of critiquing power without building it. So I want us to think about that for a second. We're critiquing power without building in every movement or every activation that got shorter and shorter and more identitarian, right? Because they all started out that way. It's all based on identity, right? We had Muslims, we had Black people, we had women, we had Asians, we had, migrants, which, we'll just assume to be brown. It was just identity, 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 identity. And you know how I feel about this. Identity can and maybe even should be your entry point into movements. It shouldn't be your exit point, right? We should be bound by a set of beliefs. I don't want to be in a space where somebody who is more knowledgeable about something can't share that with me just because they're white, or that you can't have an argument with me. First of all, I'm going to be right because that's just who I am. But I'm not right because I'm so smart, or it's because I listen to what we're all saying and I cut through the bullshit. And, now we're talking about something. I don't know. Sorry, I don't even mean to be talking out, right? But let me just get back to this because I'm really not well at the moment. But I want you to think about the critiquing power without building it for a moment, okay? What are some things that I can point to? These are not simple anecdotes. This is just the reality. I want to go back to some of our previous episodes, but think about the pro-Palestine marches, tens of millions of people across America alone. All the student activations, right? So incredibly moving. And I never once, right? And I read a lot, and I'm not talking about journalists, right? But I didn't see anything about foreign policy. It was like, stop the bombs. But there wasn't a single thing about foreign policy. And then, of course, there was the don't vote. They're both the same. You want to know something, by the way? I can't remember who, as a friend sent me this. And this isn't like a gotcha because, again, right? Nothing that the left did or didn't do has led to this. Nothing. That is very imperative to know. But here we go. It was what's this guy's name? So he was on Ezra Klein's show, and it was Israel's plan endless occupation, right? So Ezra Klein brings up Kamala Harris around the 48-minute mark with I want to shout out Michael for sending this to me. Amit Siegel. He definitively says that Kamala would have pushed an arms embargo. Whether that's true or not is irrelevant, because our job was to shore up the power to get that to happen. It doesn't matter if it takes 10 years. Failure is a part of this, right? We all champion Christian Smalls for seeing through, being a part of a team. Sorry, there was a greater team that unionized, Amazon, in their local, whatever. But before that, it was attempted in the South by, middle-aged Black folks, and 2 to 3 times over they failed. There's a great book. One day I'll talk to this person on the show called Fight Like Hell that documents so many of our fights. But failure is a part of this work. And the point is that it doesn't matter how long it takes us. We have a mandate, right? Because everybody said, oh, it's irredeemable. The system's irredeemable. I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not interested in that. I don't waste my time, right? I care about what we do with what we know. And if we know, okay, if I accept the fact that this is an irredeemable system, then I have an obligation as a leftist to protect and defend as many people as I possibly can while I possibly can. We do that. That's what we do. And somewhere along the line, the work really became about judging, like just critiquing from the sidelines, right? I don't need to take ownership of this. They're both the same. Whether or not they had voted wouldn't have moved the needle, but it demonstrated, though, a level of discordance that I found so jarring, especially being aware that the right was consolidating their power so much, right? And so well. So what happens to the left, right? What happens to the left after all these movements where we end up caring more about cultural presence? It becomes what? Right? Hyper-individualist. We're armed with new language, but we don't have a new understanding, but we don't have the political infrastructure to apply it properly, right? So the work of the left then became about enforcing that language on others. And identity was the means of enforcement, right? Are you with me now? Now this, I hope that you felt that where you're like, because when I read this to Corey and I was like, it just took me so long to articulate it, because you got to go through a process of elimination. Like, we know so much that it's like, what is the most important thing to name in this, to make this campaign or this new activation make sense? We have to really truly understand the culture and the failures, and because that's the only way that we can address them, right? So the language that we learned was no longer a tool to understand each other, right? And to generate discourse, because that's actually the point. We actually are the ones who create language. It became about enforcing our language, those new terms that these movements generated on each other. And we use our identity as a weapon against each other. So pronouns took precedent over policy, for example, right? It wasn't about healthcare. It was about, whether somebody not respected my pronouns or not, which I always fucking hated. I just think that's a piece. Let me not get into it, right? But representation replaced radicalism, right? Orthodoxy replaced organizing, right? So this normalized a culture of hyper-individualism, which was like, well, it felt like a win if there was some transgender in a show somewhere, right? Or if somebody went viral, or, if I am making endless content, which I mean, the way that some of these folks, every day I'm experiencing anti-Semitism. Every day I experience transphobia. I'm a nignog that checks just about every box. And I'm like, I'm not getting this. What are you doing? Right. But it was about attention. Right. And what happens when you start to enforce language and weaponize identity is that hyper individualism which is the antithesis of community, normalized call out culture in our own circles, in our own spaces. Right. There was an unprincipledness because of hyper individualism. It wasn't about an agenda anymore or doing work for the community. It was like, actually, I don't feel good that you use that word in here. You're anti-Black. You're this, you're that. It became about whether or not my emotional needs were being met in these organizing spaces. From here on in, we are putting our foot on those people's ass. Get the fuck out. You're so welcome here, but you're not healed enough to do the work. Get the fuck out of here for now. Because I'm going to fight for your right to be annoying and for your health and for your future. Right. But I'm not going to fight you. And we know that call out culture got normalized and then became cancel culture. Right. It normalized virtue signaling, which is like not about the work or the communities that we serve, because, again, being a leftist is actually being a service worker. It was like, no, the left is supposed to serve my needs. Right. So it's about me showing you I'm a good person. This is why around, say, the pro-Palestine movements, so many people said, just my morals, I can't vote. I don't give a fuck about your morals. It's about what are the principles of the left, of the struggle, right? It's not about your personal morals. I couldn't give a goddamn about your personal morals. Morality is some Western bullshit that's literally being used to justify all this. You'll hear me say, morals here and there in a different context, but to suggest that your personal grievances or your sense of justice supersedes you're not ready to be a part of this, right? And of course, what came of it, and especially because so much of this was informed by white queers, punishment. If you don't adhere, you get punished, right? And the thing is, the goalpost for what was acceptable within that orthodoxy kept changing. So it's not, these are my pronouns, see me. It's, if you don't get this right, I'm going to get you fired. And again, we have to always remember, if you create a force, you create a counter force, right? Jordan Peterson, you'll hear me go back again and again, because I cannot think of somebody who should be more irrelevant. He was a nobody in Canada. But because some trans folks in Canada decided that they were going to try to, go after him for not respecting their pronouns. He's a tenured professor. If you had just taken a power analysis for 5 seconds and thought, is this the, but it's not, I'm not angry at people trying. It's more that even well-informed people have been approaching the work this way, right? You want to know what this did? It sent them, like, our punishment, the virtue signaling, the call out and cancel culture. It sent a message to the world that the left cared more about political correctness than we did about people. That's what happened. And we lost the integrity that we at least used to have. We actually became the caricature that we were often made out to be, right? Which is the infighting, can't get our shit together, right? And we started to fracture and resent the shit out of each other. White people felt like they couldn't speak. I'm like, I don't want to be in anything where somebody can't tell me how they feel or what they think about something. Black folks started to distrust being in spaces with white queers because, my God, what a vicious bunch when they're not in there, when they don't have their shit together, right? But there ended up being a fatigue and a resentment that was just going across the board. I have never observed a silent trans white person in my life. I would love to see one. It would be like seeing a unicorn. Do they even exist? I want to know, and then that culture became normalized. And I'm not concerned. Black Americans and Black folks, this is how this stuff works. This is how movements start. Again, you have the spontaneous, activations that happen when injustice arises, but then there's the infrastructure. And again, you only need a small groups of people that are helping to curate that, usher that in. But, you know, when we started to say that we cared more about political correctness than we did about policy, than we did about wins, than we did about building political power, why would anybody take us seriously? We didn't take each other seriously. We stopped communicating, right? And we stopped generating discourse. Do you know what that means? We stopped using words. Everybody was afraid of saying the wrong thing, and you had to say it perfectly. And if you didn't say it perfectly, well, fuck you. You were done. You're dead in the water. You're out. Right? What redemption? It is very much Western. Like, punishment is part of the Western project. Right? Like, why do you think when celebrities go bad and where they get called out for something, why do you think they end up doing black media before they come back in? Because there's a culture of redemption that is built into Black consciousness. That's why Black liberation theory and Black liberation has become emblematic of all freedom struggles all over the world, right? The language, the aesthetic, the people. We just stopped functioning, and we no longer modeled free speech, right? We stopped generating new words. It became punitive. And that is why we said, trans women are women. And they said, how? And we were like, you're transphobic. That's not and you want to know why? Because you didn't know what to say. You didn't know what to say. And why couldn't we just be honest about that? Right? Because in order to know what to say, we'd actually have to think about women, but we didn't, because we didn't give a shit about abortion rights. Because then we'd have to think about women. And women weren't the fad at the time. It was about trans people. We lost trans rights when we lost abortion rights because it is about body autonomy, right? But because we had become fully identitarian, it wasn't what was interesting. And also, we have this now very stupid analysis where any work on electoral justice or any local organizing, well, that's just you believing in the system. I don't know when we became this stupid, but I can tell you that Black organizers didn't stop working. They weren't this stupid. And, I don't want to, typecast where it's like only Black people were doing it. No. But it's the folks who stayed in the tradition of organizing, right? We could no longer defend our beliefs because we stopped having them, right? They weren't cohesive anymore. We weren't fighting for healthcare. We were running around on the street saying, stop doing this, stop doing that. Like, imagine saying, I want this to, we have to stop sending bombs. And it's like, yes, we have to stop funding a genocide project. Yeah. Right. But then also simultaneously preclude the possibility of building the power that it would take to do that. Not even actually thinking about what the theory of change needed to be to win. This is what the right capitalized on. This is why they were able to present such a unified narrative. It wasn't simply because they're better funded or better organized, right? They don't have the, burden, if you will, of representing plurality, but it's actually a blessing that we do. I think somewhere along the line, it no longer, we felt at the as the left that it was no longer our responsibility to defend our way of life, and also to tell a story more compelling than the other side. It was just about bitching about Democrats and behind closed doors each other. Except for me, I was always talking shit out loud. I mean, I know it was actually all of us, right? But that's what enabled them to claim free speech. And so we lost community. We didn't have community anymore. So we didn't have a belief system. We don't have community, right? Do you want to know something? Like, that's all we have. We're not the well-funded side. We're not the, billionaire side. All we have is each other. And we took that for granted. And now, right? Now is the time to go back to some of those roots. And it's okay. It's okay. Like, I'm not concerned about us getting our shit together. It's okay. It's just like, in an attempt to right historical wrongs, we just overcorrected in the wrong areas, and we lost some of the recipes, right? And And I'm going to pause here because I think this example, if Corey, if you want to pull it up, embodies it well with Matt and Bo and Yang in their episode. So we'll play that clip in a second. But even now, like, I want to be clear, right? The people who are out in the streets right now, organizing and marching and fighting ICE. That's who we are at the core. It's all still here, and we're still here. The issue is the left is exceptional at coming together against the thing. We do that so well. I want to remind you of a time when I was in Boston, okay? And I was there because there was going to be a white supremacist rally, and it was one of the first times. It was one of the first times that, they were doing that out in public, right? This is just around the time of Charleston, which I'll actually reference as well. When they were doing their march with their tiki torches, fucking fags. But anyway, so I'm there to help because there was a huge amount of threats and attention on this protest of this rally of white supremacists. That was, they were going to show the world that they were powerful, and so they're supposed to have a couple of thousand, right? And so I went out there to help the local organizers and the local chapter. And part of what I do is I come in and go over routes, infrastructure, what are the talking points, where the media hits, and also just shoring up security, whatever, right? It was kind of my job. And you want to know something? So there I was, and this is Boston. This is not like a huge city with a huge, prominent Black population, or even Black Lives Matter chapter. These things were happening, quite organically, and we hoped that maybe we get just over half of the number that the white supremacists were expected to get. You know how many people showed up that day? 40,000 people showed up on our side. 40,000 people. People came from different states even. I'm at the truck at the very front of it, and I can't see the end. Stunning, beautiful, moving, right? We're so good at coming together against the thing. We don't know how to come together for a thing. What I love, before we pull up this clip, I just wanted to say, because I just remembered this, right? Because we cannot hold fascists accountable. There is no accountability in fascism. It precludes us from having to engage with these fuck faces. This moment requires and demands us to talk to each other, which we don't do, which is why I say the only way this works and the only way we win is to fight around free speech. And again, it'll be cute and sexy and all the other things, right? Because it's not about free speech. It's about what our ideology actually is. What is our belief system? We're inviting people into a way of life, a better one than this. But it requires a level of intelligence and tolerance that has been non-existent on the left for a really long time, right? I want to give you the ACLU a while back. And this is when I was like, oh God, we have no analysis whatsoever. And there was some flags and I was just seeing them all over the place. But when that white supremacist rally happened in Charleston, the ACLU ended up defending those white supremacist free speech rights in court. And all I saw was a bunch of lefties be like, fuck the ACLU, you see, this is what, and I was like, gosh, we don't get it. We don't get it. If we want to reserve the right to say what must be said, so do they. So do they. And that's annoying as fuck. But it's fine as long as we remain the A side. Because ultimately, the loss of that will always disastrously impact us more. The job isn't to silence them. The job is to render them fucking irrelevant. We don't need to make them smaller. We need to make ourselves bigger, because when we create a force, we create a counter force. That means that that thing becomes defended. We don't need it to be defended. We need it irrelevant. Again, I want to remind you, we're going to punish people because of pronouns, right? Building up resentment. We're going to punish people because of this and that. Go back to the Black tradition. We told white people, stop calling us niggers. And they said, no, nigger. And we were like, okay, fuck you then. And we went over there and we made our own fucking culture and we wrote our own fucking books and and then everybody went over there. music, comedy, entertainment, whatever. And it made it so that anybody who said that word or thought that way was so stupid and marginal and irrelevant that to even acknowledge them, right? To even acknowledge them would be to lose IQ. That's what we need to go back to. We take the edge out of this language, which is why it is more important to like fuck virtue signaling. It's not about us running around, yelling the R word or retard or whatever. It's about removing, right? The virtue signaling that became part of it. It wasn't about holding people accountable. It was about saying, I am a good person. I am a good person. And I'm going to demonstrate that by drawing attention to this thing, right? But where were you when Section 504 was being gutted, right? That allowed disabled people to even be in public spaces. This is not an either or. It's what the left has decided is important. We've decided that language and political correctness is more important than people, more important than policy, more important than power. And we were wrong. And now we get to right that wrong. But imagine my surprise, right? And even well, I shouldn't say a surprise. Let me actually remain in the positive. The reason why I'm bringing up this is because it is an example of what we are no longer going to be doing as we move forward. Because the answer isn't simply, right? Because yes, we're outfunded 1 trillion times over, right? In terms of leftist shows or whatever you want to call it, right? And you all know the extraordinary lift it took to even for me to get here. I think I made it more complicated now. Well, before, but I want to be clear that this is why the answer can't be to simply throw money at random left-leaning content creators, because they don't have anything to fucking say. If we cannot correct this preoccupation with political correctness, with policing the fuck out of each other, we've already lost again. If we keep believing that pulling out all the people, look at, here's a person who was impacted. Well, now everybody is. This isn't a movement for people of color. This isn't a movement for Black people. This isn't a movement for trans people. This isn't a movement for Asians. This isn't a movement for any single person. This is our movement. This is about our ideology, our belief system, a pluralist one. And so this is a prime example, and Corey, if you want to pull it up, of what I'm talking about, because it's always important to make sure that we understand these are not anecdotal fallacies. I obviously have sources for every one of these things, but that's for the funders. You guys don't need to worry about that right now.
Let me just qualify the Jasmine Crockett thing. She's not going to win a Senate seat in Texas, you guys. Like, if Beto O'Rourke couldn't do it, like, Jasmine Crockett is not going to do it. She is and it's nothing against her. It's just that she is a politician and that she is like very well defined already. And I think it's my opinion that we are going to need someone who is less defined at this moment, that then rises up. Like, I'm interested in this Tallarico guy from Texas.
Oh, I don't know him.
I'm just interested in him.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I haven't seen him before. It would be hard for them to define him as anything other than what he is, which is like a rising Democratic politician from someplace like Texas, who is like, yes, speaking a little bit to the middle, but at least he's someone that like we can't define already.
Okay.
Like, oh, so this clip didn't have it, but that was Matt qualifying what he had said. Opened up with, she's too defined, right? And then qualifies it, right? This created a massive amount of discourse and backlash that I found, to be perfectly honest, incredibly embarrassing. I was just, I was like, oh my God, right? But I have notes for everyone because that's my job, right? Where should I start? I don't want to just know that I have notes for everyone. First and foremost, though, I like this. Why shouldn't they be talking? Why shouldn't he be saying his opinion? That's exactly what we need. How do you think we clarify things? How do you think we interrogate things? How do you think we get things right? Through a series of failures and corrections so we get to the point. We get to the thing that matters the most, right? I want more of us talking about politics. I want more of us caring about what's going on. They might never touch politics again. This nigga had to apologize, right? But let me give notes. So first and foremost, I am a proponent of more of this, which is people who are left-leaning talking about politics and politicians and in whatever capacity they want to, in whatever capacity. To the one side, I'll say, when Black people hear the word define, like when she's too X, there's often codes that people and liberals in particular will use to to imply or say Black without having to say Black, right? You could see it even on the right, the woke, the DEI, the this, the that, right? The urban. So defined, if that's obviously going to, the ears, right? The ears were ringing, but ultimately, the conclusion was correct. I don't like Jasmine Crockett. She annoys the shit out of me. But I will defend her forever. She's an anti-Trump. I'm a Ayanna Pressley, AOC type, right? But that doesn't mean that Crockett is, a crock of shit. She's great for what she does, which is biting at the ankles of that power structure. But does she win? The analysis was mostly correct. The justifications, I don't think were, I like Beto O'Rourke, or this guy seems good, or whatever, right? But that's not what they do. So that, to me, that is a footnote that matters so little. I brought this up with several folks in our community, and they immediately went to, yeah, that was fucked up, wasn't it? And it concerned me that you would think that's my take, knowing me. You think that my take was that what he said about Jasmine Crockett is fucked. It was correct. He was absolutely correct. You can have notes, but again, there's no good faith anymore, right? Oh, well, with his platform, okay, then make a bigger platform. I know I'm also saying that, a bit tongue in cheek. I know it's not that simple, but that's actually the point. Why don't we feel a sense of responsibility? If you think you're so right, make a better argument, right? This is what annoys me about the left. Where was your theory of change? If he's wrong, where's your theory of change? Oh, well, there's racism in it. Yeah, there is. In Texas, in the country, what's your theory of change? Make a better argument than Matt made. That's your responsibility, but we just want to sit back. We just want to sit back and chirp. But one thing did annoy me, the liberals or left-leaning people who are largely white that did side with Matt is they annoyed it has nothing to do with her being Black. And I'm like, you don't even know Black people. You don't talk to Black. Like, when's the last time that any of y'all walked into a room that was full of Black people? Do you want to know? And you might think, well, it's the last time. First of all, I'm in rooms with all white people anyway, but I put myself in there on purpose. I went to Nefesh because I wanted to know what left-leaning Jews was up to. It is important that we intentionally go into places where we're not the most important fucking thing, right? So she's not, it has nothing to do with her being Black. I'm like, I don't want to hear that from you. You annoy me, right? That's neither here nor there. That's not part of the power analysis or whatever. But all to say, yeah, if she's too defined. Should Matt have been able to say, as a Black woman who is as vocal as she is, and she's partisan, the likelihood of her winning in Texas is almost nil, right? And he said, don't give money to her campaign. You could have done without that call to action because you didn't have a theory of change for the other side, right? But still, those are just notes. But on this side, where was your theory of change? Where was he wrong? You just don't want him talking about a Black woman? Are we still here? She is literally a politician. We're facing fascism, right? And this is where we go still. It was less that it happened and more that it was as big of a story as it was, to the point where this guy had to apologize, which I wish he hadn't done. But I guess at this point he has to worry about his career. And again, that culture of punitiveness. Now that's they're on our side. They're on our side. I don't know much. I can't speak to it deeply, but I can tell you that behind the scenes, Bowen Yang has put on a lot of Black women. Right? I can't speak to Matt, but you're the company you keep. This is we just hurl things now. Just like throw stones. That's our movement. No, we don't. We fucking take those stones and we fucking turn them into some fucking useful shit, and we build a foundation up for a new movement. We just need to go back to our fucking roots. But I am going to, and I have been unwell, and I'm getting help for the sleeplessness, but the mandate is the same. basically, I'm not going to miss an episode for a very, very long time. There is a sense of responsibility on presence, especially as we shore up what the new left is, because what's amazing about this, there's only one flaw with framing something around that non-identity on the left, right? Which is free speech isn't cool. Well, as soon as you slap some black folks on it, that's going to fix it real fast, real fast. But what it also does is for all the people who are just more obsessed with identity and policing other people than they are in changing the world, well, this will be boring to them. They won't touch this with a 10-foot pole. By the time they realize that it's the next big wave, we already would have consolidated our bases. And any attempts at agent provocateurs, whether paid or unpaid, will be rendered inconsequential. It really gets the riffraff out of the way, right? Because again, it shouldn't be just me saying, hey, we've got to stop using the term Zionism. We got to start using, Judaic or Jewish extremism in the same way that we use Islamic or Christian. Like, this is what we do. We generate language and discourse, but part of it is that we get it wrong at first. I think that if we lived in a culture where we weren't constantly beating the shit out of each other, Matt would have been able to say outright, as a black woman who is this partisan, right? But he's not allowed to. And now he's not allowed to say anything at all. This is why, on a cultural level, we have lost. Because this became our preoccupation. This is why on a political level we have lost. And I'm not interested in the gargantuan amount of power they have on the other side. Like, we are set up to fail. So don't worry, I'm not saying that. That's why I'm so clear on that. The fact that when we fight, we win. We're not fighting to win, we're fighting each other. And I'm not interested in that anymore. First of all, I keep winning. And second of all, it's a waste of time. I want to, my job is to help build us up, right? Not break us down. And that is the infection of all the white queers who came in with their post-secondary education and used it as missionaries did, with Catholicism and Christianity, right? It wasn't the education. I'm like, fucking, you guys know I'm a nerd. I love reading. I love learning. But it's in the application of it. We use it for punitive reasons. Black and brown and poor, white, queer, and trans people were building culture and fucking family and mother, right? And all that shit. Living with each other when they got kicked out of the homes. And white queers came in and said, you can't say tranny. You can't say transsexual. You can't do this. You can't do that. And infected us. But and you can see it. You want to know why? I'm starting to realize that this is not just some thing in my head. What does academia teach you, right? A really important skill, deconstruction. And that's all we do. We break and break and break and break it down until it means fucking nothing, until we're talking and trading in abstractions. That's when nihilism seeps in. That's when we get to say, well, nothing, it doesn't matter anyway. The system's fucked. Yeah. Have you read any books on Black feminism? We're not you don't even feel that. You're not even allowed to feel that in Black feminism, because it's so lazy and unethical to go to that place when people's lives are on the line. There's a guy I know who kind of because I couldn't go to these funder meetings because everybody annoyed the shit out of me. So of course I had to start going because I realized nobody knew what the fuck to do. But there's a guy there, a friend of mine, who I found incredibly disappointing in that moment, because, oh, well, no, we shouldn't be funding anything because this and that. And it's like, this guy got out because people, right? The system's too fucked and nothing, It was because of people who fought outside while he was in prison that changed a policy that got him out so that he wasn't rotting in there for another 10 years because he went in as a kid, right? And now you would preclude people from having that same opportunity. Yeah, the system is fucked. Yeah, I want to get rid of fucking prisons. We haven't built up the power for that. But you think that because prisons exist and, that, we're not doing the work of abolishing them, that we shouldn't do anything at all to get as many people out as we possibly can? I can't take you seriously. I can't. And I didn't. But the clarity, I mean, definitely I'm scaring the host, but the clarity, and it's the compellingness of the argument. But even now, there are folks who are, very much still working through a defense strategy. We don't need a defense strategy, right? That's actually not what's useful now, right? It's like, hey, see, no, this is happening now. This is the moment where we get to say, we get to tell a story about people, a story about possibility, a story about protecting the things that make life meaningful, the very things that everything that this administration hates. We are in a place where there are more dispossessed than ever before. This is our bedrock and our foundation. We don't need everyone to be issue area experts. I don't need people to get language exactly right or even close to it. If you're there with me and you're trying, that's enough. That's all it takes. That's what I'm interested in. And there are more of us out there who are ready for this than there are the people who want to throw the stones. Let them. They don't have, their arms are weak anyway. You want to know why? Because there's a laziness in that. And for the record, I don't believe that's true of everybody. I think some people truly believe that that's the work. And that's the story that we have to correct. But this is not the time to come in with a strategy that is the same over and over and over again. This is the time where we learn from every single one of our movements and failures. We get to do something different now, something I've never seen before. What is our belief system? And who are the champions within that? And you want to know who it is? It's every single one of us. Our way of life is worth defending and protecting. But before it is that, it is an invitation. We have to tell a better story. And that's it. This isn't about calling for support for the Democrats. It's not about this or that. No, we start here where it's like, is this the way you want to live? Because it feels pretty bad, doesn't it? Live in a society like America is right now. And it doesn't have to be. We have, I think, been existing in this space where we've never really had to actualize in this generation as the left. Because you know what? When I thought about it, I was like, I don't actually know who the left is. We don't even take pride because we keep fucking destroying each other before we can. So that's done now. Because now that's the only people that's left to talk to is each other. You can't talk to fascists. You can yell at them and you can scream all you want. Nothing changes, nothing moves the needle. We are all that's left. And I very much look forward to the fights and failures that we're going to have with each other ahead. But what I know is I believe in good faith. And I'm more interested in what people are trying to say versus how they say it. It isn't what the fuck is wrong with you, it's what am I missing? That's the ethos. That's who we are. We're service workers. And it's okay. We don't need to decry or yell at people who are doing things differently. We just have to render them irrelevant. That's it. And we do that by telling a better story. We make ourselves bigger. We don't make people smaller. So I love you all very much. And I'm going to make sure that I get some help with I didn't know that I could develop a problem. I mean, my sleep was always wonky, but this is scary, but I have good community and I have you. And I have this work, and that's been enough. With my mom gone, the world does feel a little less magical, and I think that I'm really looking forward to the good work we do because I think it might bring a little bit of that back. So I love you all very much. Thank you, to Corey, for making us look good, sound good. We're trying, we're zhuzhing it up. This is going to look nicer. I'm going to get a little desk and everything. But I realized that I wanted to look the part, in terms of, our new sort of marching orders. And just know that there are so many people who want change and who are ready for it. And, it's not just about funders and it's not just about this and that, but there are folks who are out there ready and willing to champion this work. And it's just about figuring out how, but first and foremost, we've got to shore up our bases because if we just start to, this person throw money, this person, everybody's a target right now. Everybody's being investigated. And so, you know, we need the shield. The shield is the banner. And when we have that, then we can actually do the work of protecting people, which, to be honest, we've never really done on the left. We just kind of thank folks if we even get that far and then throw them to the wolves. So half of my face is facing systemic collapse from lack of sleep. So I'll get going. But the good work is happening. It's everywhere on the streets. It's some of our leadership. It's a lot of our on the ground leadership, a lot of nonprofits. You know, and one of the things I'm looking forward to doing as a shored up left is telling people, reminding people who our champions are, because good work is always happening, but we don't always get to know. Because it's content creators, I think, that are dominating. And again, what we're seeing online isn't what's really happening. It's curated and directed to fuel discord and disharmony, but also a sense of despondency. So let's remind people who the A side is. You know, you could be over there with the fucking Michael Rappaports. Nigga looks like syphilis. Right? You could be over here the same way the same way that we did back in the day. Go ahead, talk your shit. That's who we are. We make and we generate. We give life. They take it. Time to let go of political correctness. Start to hold on to people, because that has always been our one and only resource, and also our best, because no matter what, that's ultimately why they're breaking us up, why they're creating discord, because, oh my God, if we find each other, they know it's a wrap. Now it's just a matter of when. We've lost the plot. We've not lost each other. I love you all very much, and I can't wait for the next episode of Dark Woke, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And I can't wait to see us rise finally, and really honor and hold what our leftist ideology, our belief system. It's because it's worth it. Fuck, we're right about everything. You know what I mean? We're just getting in our way. So here's to you, and here's to the good work that we'll be doing soon. And that's already being done. I love you all very much.